We don't talk about this much as a society. We don't talk about this as a church, and and we haven't really talked about this through the years too much here at Crossroads. But there's a bigger picture that sometimes we're missing when we talk about the prisoner, especially when we start looking at statistics of that 95% of the individuals that we incarcerate will be coming home. And so we really have to look at that and say, well, what does that mean? What does that really mean? I mean, 95%, that's almost everybody that's incarcerated, except for that very few that will be doing life in prison that we do serve as well here at Crossroads. And so when I look at that, and I look at what is the journey of the prisoner, and the journey of the prisoners is a continuum that it's at the time of arrest, and we have the whole court process. Then we have the sentencing, and then we have the longer period of incarceration, and that's where Crossroads steps in, which is a great place to step in. And then we have the point where someone is getting out of prison and going home, and whatever that looks like. And that really became apparent to me last week when I got a phone call from an individual who called me. I didn't know him. I knew him just a tad because he went to our church, and I haven't seen him there for years. But he called me up and he said, "You know what, Douglas? Someone told me that I need to call you because it looks like I may be going to prison in about 6 weeks." Of course, when I hear that, it always breaks my heart for so many reasons. And so I agreed to meet with him. And so I met him at my church, and it's always interesting to me when someone has a lot of unknowns in their mind. They just don't know what questions to ask. They just don't, because they're really kind of in a fog. But we got through it. We talked about it. And he was obviously, and I'm thankful for this, he was broken. And he was willing to receive the words that I was sharing with him. So as I'm talking to him about his family, his kids, his wife, the difficulties that are sure to arise as they go along, and told him straight up, there's going to be dark periods ahead. It's going to be scary. It's going to be hard. It's going to be lonely. Yet I also knew in the back of my mind that later that evening, I was going to be going to a celebration. And it was a celebration for somebody who was getting off of parole. And it's somebody that I had met about 7 years prior inside the prison when we were volunteering in there, who was a Crossroads student and took that very seriously. But he was also one that really delved into the Bible, that really looked to say, I can't journey that way anymore, because it was not his first trip to prison. And so he allowed us as volunteers and others to breathe into his life, to take guidance, to just be open with what he was thinking. And so I was able to tell this gentleman and just say, you know what? Have to ask yourself, because I told him about the celebration that I was going to. I said, I told him about this gentleman's journey, and I said, there's really two ways you can go. You can go off to the left and continue what you're doing, or you can look and say, how do I get here to this end? How do I get there where there's 40 people in a room celebrating that you are getting off of parole? And I told him, I said, I don't want to know today, but the next time you meet, you need to make a decision to say, who are we going to tell that you're going to prison? Are you going to allow the church to know that you're going to prison? Do you want help from the church, from the prison? Are you willing to journey? Are you willing to allow the church come to you and say, how can we help you? And take that journey with you. And so I think he's at that point where he's just able to receive that. So I'm looking forward to our next visit. I've already got the preparations with the church kind of laid, that that's maybe happening. And so as a tip for those of us here at Crossroads, because so many folks in prison don't truly know who the church is. They hadn't attended church beforehand, or they might have, but they walked away from it. And part of the challenges with the prison church is that the lives of prisoners is so close. They see everything everybody does, whereas in the outside we have some separation. And so I've heard it 100 times. Say, I am a Christian, whatever that means. I am a Christian, but I'm not going to go to the church because that guy over there goes to church. He says he's a Christian, but he's doing that. He's doing crazy stuff, and I don't want anything to do with that. I don't want to be around him. What they're telling me is that they don't want to go to the church in the prison because it's full of hypocrites. And so, I have to say, it is. It's full of hypocrites, and I'm one of them. And so, but we know as the church that, we have a lot of faults in the church. But it is what God wants us to do. It wants us to gather as a community and work through life together. And so I just want to encourage you to think about how can we encourage those that are incarcerated to attend church, but more importantly, to teach them about the importance of community worship, community gathering. Because when they get out, again, they can either go this way or they can go that way. And I always encourage you have to find a community that will accept you, a church that will accept you. And that's easier said than done unless they've been practicing it inside the prison. So I just encourage you to speak truth about the church, to encourage them to go. And I think that would go a long ways for your letters. So.
Start laughing. Yeah.